Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee meeting. Tonight we're having our public hearing, at which time any of our citizens are welcome to come up to the podium, and we'll give a little more instruction on that in a moment. My name is Robert P. I'm chairman of our Budget Committee. Vice Chairman Trey Gooch is here. I'll introduce all our Budget Committee members first. Commissioner Paul Johnson, Commissioner Wayne Irving. Our steering chairman is also on the budget, Chairman Craig Harris, Steve Piercy, and Chanto Sereno, and that makes up our Budget Committee. We also got in the audience several other commissioners. Our Mayor Joe Carr is present. Our Commission Chairman Jeff Phillips is here. Anthony Johnson, also Chairman of Public Works, is here. Hope Oliver is also here. Chairman Pettis Reed, Chairman of Public Safety, is here, and Chairman Phil Dodd. I see him in the back waving, Chairman of our Health and Ed Committee. Did I miss any of the commissioners? Phil, you're right there, yes. And Phil Wilson, who's also Vice Chairman of Health and Ed. Sorry about that, Phil. Tonight, we're going to cover the budget as we have worked on it so far. Michael will go over the budget, and after that, we will actually open the floor for questions from the public. When you are invited up, we have a podium directly behind Commissioner Johnson there. If you would come up, state your name and your address. Now, there's also a pad there. I'm a little slow on writing. If you'd write your name and address, I would appreciate it. We just use that for the record. We won't hold any of that against you. Tonight, when you make, you may have questions directed to the commissioners. If you do, we won't be answering questions tonight. We're here to listen, but any questions that are brought up, we will address probably tomorrow night is our next meeting. But at this time, I want to go ahead and turn this over to our Finance Director, Michael Smith, and let him do an overview of where we're at so far.
Good evening. So tonight I'll go over kind of where we are so far on the budget process, how we got here, and then what the next steps are. Slides are not changing. Maybe OIT can. Maybe if OIT hears me, they can come down and tell me which button. See if they come down. Here they are. All right, so tonight what you're going to see is the summary of where we've gotten so far. This process started really back in January when my office and the mayor's office got together as a game plan, met with department heads over the next couple months, and then in May we started meeting with the Budget and Finance Committee, and they've made some additional changes that's what we put out to publication. That was published in the newspaper on June 10th. You'll see the summary of it tonight. It is also, I'll go over directions of how to find that on our website, just for the record in case anybody wants to see that. So before we get into this year's budget, the first thing I want to do is give a brief history of the property tax rate. I will go ahead and right off the bat say there's no proposed property tax increase this year as of right now. And then there's a historical dating back to 1996. You can see the reappraisal years there in yellow. But that just kind of gives you kind of a brief history of how the rate has changed over the years and how much the county has grown. Because as you can see, back in 1996, the tax rate was over $3. And so that's interesting to see is we're obviously collecting way more property tax dollars. And so that just kind of shows you a trend there is how much we're growing. And then next year will be a reappraisal year. So we'll get a certified tax rate for next budget year for 26-27. And so, that's liable to drop even more. But this slide right here is going to show you every year we talk about what is our proposed rate, how much does the penny bring in. And so this right here shows you there's no proposed increase. So 2024 is our adopted rate. That's the tax year, not the budget year. The 2025 proposed rate is right there as you see it, so no increase. And then we always get a lot of questions on sharing property tax dollars with the city, and you can see that down there at the bottom where our county gets 85% and the city would get 14.94% of the amount that goes to education up there at the top. And then right there on the bottom right is going to be the amount per penny. So if we were ever unfortunately have to have a tax increase for every penny you raise, that's the additional revenue. And for reference, last year it was around 1.54 million. This year it's 1.57, just for reference. So now we get into the summary of this year's budget. I will briefly go through this, kind of summarize, talk about each fund a little bit. So starting right off the top is the county general fund. I'll address one thing. Right now it shows that there's a deficit of around $1.5 million. The majority of that deficit, a little over $1 million of that, is really due to receiving the opioid funds in the previous year and spending them next year. That was the same thing that occurred last year. And so we have no way around showing it like that, but we're really not in a true deficit, but it's just receiving that money from the State Opioid Abatement Council this current fiscal year and spending it next year. We move on down to the solid waste fund. As you can see, that's proposed to be balanced. Our ambulance fund is proposed balance. Our 119 fund, as a reminder, that's where the Smyrna-Rutherford County Airport Authority pays their bond money to us. The way we have to show that, it shows it a deficit, and that's why we show that adjustments column out there to the right. There's not an actual deficit there. That's a pass-through. We get down to our 121 and 122 fund. That is our DEA and our drug control fund. Both of those are held by us, but those are the sheriff's office uses those for a lot of their cases. We have the highway fund that actually shows a small surplus. And then 141, 143, and 177 are all school funds. A couple things I'll mention there. 143 shows a deficit, but we have to have a spend down plan there. So we see that every year. We get a lot of questions about that. That deficit is part of our spend down plan. And 141, we have some things in there like charter schools. Next year we have to fund them on an increased basis again. They're adding some grades. So that makes up a little bit of that deficit there as well. And then we get down to our last fund right there is going to be our general debt service fund. As a reminder, one of the things that's not in there yet is the approximately $110 million that we'll borrow next month. That is for the Laverne High School addition and the new middle school. So right now that does show a small surplus. However, we will be amending that budget next year once we issue those bonds. Before I move on from this slide, a couple of notable budget items this year that I want to mention that I've had a lot of questions about, and we'll just kind of state for the record. A lot of people ask about pay, so I'll cover a little bit of that for the county and the schools. So far, the county this year is proposing lifting the table at least 2% for all employees. And then there's additional targeted public safety raises. There's an additional two-step move in the budget for detention officers, firefighter positions, and EMTs. Also an additional grade change moves for patrol, plus everybody's, if you're eligible for your step increase. And so we do have targeted raises in the budget for that. The school system also has raises in their budget. I believe they're raising their pay table 2.5%, and most of their employees will be eligible for a step increase. So that is some highlights there. Another question we get a lot is if you want to look at the budget, the proposed budget online, here's a screenshot. You go to the website, go to proposed budgets by year, and you can look at them all the way back several years, but this current year's budget is on there in detail. It's got the same budget documents that our budget committee has had since the start of this process. So those are on there for anybody that wants to look at them, print them. If you need help falling asleep at night, you can definitely read through those. What's the next step? So tomorrow night we will meet. The Budget Committee will then recommend a tax levy and appropriations resolution to the full commission. That meeting will take place on June 23rd on Monday morning at 9 a.m. And so that's our next steps there. So then that brings us to tonight, and as required by our private act, we did post the budget in the paper as required and are required to hold a public hearing. We are meeting those deadline requirements. We're actually ahead by a day or two. We had to move it based on a holiday this week, so that's why we're here tonight. So tonight, as part of the public hearing procedures, when you come to the podium, as the chairman stated, if you'll state your name and address through the microphone for the record, and it helps us if you write your name down on the pad just so we can get the spelling correct. And then please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, at this time, we will open the floor for the public hearing. Anyone that wishes to speak, please come forward to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Clark. My address is 911 Netherland Drive in Murfreesboro. I have two questions. One, what percentage of school funding is funding the charter schools, and how do you anticipate the trend for that in future school funding? That's my first question. And my second question is, just in reading the news recently, there's been some question about the accuracy of property appraisals, and if properties have been over-appraised. Will there be, if that is the case, will there be adjustments in the budget to account for those inaccuracies? Thank you.
As I stated, we won't be answering those questions tonight, anybody that comes forward, but we will specifically answer these questions for you to the best of our ability. Hopefully, most of them we can answer by tomorrow night. Thank you, Ms. Clark. You got a lot of 3 minutes left. If you've got anything else you'd like to say.
That's dangerous to offer that balance of time. I do want to say just to the commission, this is not budget related, but I'll say it anyway. I have encountered a group of MTSU students who are interested in knowing more about local government, and this summer we're going to start a project that I've named the Civic Engagement Summer Study. And with that, I will be continuing to attend meetings with MTSU students, and for the purpose of helping them understand the workings of local government and the issues that local government addresses, and how to find ways to use their own voice in local government to address the issues they care about. So you'll see us here in the chamber this summer attending committee meetings and full commission, and it will be part of the summer study that I've offered MTSU students. This is not an initiative by the university. This is just a personal thing I'm doing. So with that, I will step away. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're always welcome to bring anybody that's interested in our government. Thank you. Okay, anyone else wish to come forward to speak about our budget? This is kind of normal. I'm not seeing anybody rise at this time, but normally when we announce that there is no proposed property tax increase, we have very few takers as far as coming forward. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We will try to answer your questions tomorrow night, Ms. Clark. And Michael, have you got anything else you'd like to cover? Any questions from anybody on our committee or the commissioners that are here, Mayor? Any comments? Hearing none, we're adjourned.